for being here. Thanks for being here. We are excited to have you, and we'll get started here in just a few more minutes. All right, a couple more minutes. Although when you're waiting for those minutes, it seems long. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. A few more minutes. Folks are coming in. All right, we should be getting started shortly. Okay, I see it leveling off a little bit now. So, hello everyone again. It's nice to see you all. My name is Raquel Ruddy, Managing Director of Community Development here at NCST, and we are just delighted to have you join our September Community Impact briefing call today, and also very excited about our presenter and presentation. And I'm going to introduce our Director of Policy, David Hunter, who's going to be introducing our speaker. And just so you all know, we will be, we will have a Q&A session right after the presentation, along with some quick policy updates towards the end. So we do hope that you stay on the whole time and get ready with your questions. So David, with that, I'll hand it over to you, and you can.
Thanks, Raquel. Hi, everybody. I'm David Hunter, the Policy Director at NCST. Before introducing our speaker, I just wanted to say we have almost 200 registered participants today. So obviously there's a lot of interest in this topic, and we encourage you to submit questions as they occur to you during the presentation, in the hopes of having a robust discussion afterwards, which I'll help moderate. But I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, Stacey Epperson, who is president and founder of Next Step Network, whose mission is to put sustainable homeownership within reach of everyone while transforming the manufactured housing industry through consumer education, affordability, and energy efficiency. Stacey is an Ashoka Fellow and has completed the Achieving Excellence in Community Development program at Harvard's JFK School of Government. She received a Master of Public Administration at Western Kentucky University and attended the University of Kentucky's Patterson School of Diplomacy and International Commerce. She also serves as an appointed advisor to the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Manufactured Housing Consensus Committee. Stacey also serves on the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati's Advisory Council. And finally, she serves on the Inclusive Capital Partners Inspiration Council. So Stacey, welcome, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you for that introduction. So let me pull my presentation up and we'll get started here. First of all, it is just a delight to be here today. And I am really amazed with how many folks are interested in manufactured housing. I have to say, 15 years ago, it was hard for me to get 5 to 10 people to listen. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. And thank you to the National Community Stabilization Trust for reaching out and realizing this is an important topic for us to discuss. So let me get going here. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. Well, first, I think it's really important when thinking about manufactured housing as an affordable housing source, we should look at the latest research, really what's going on. And some of this kind of debunks myths and stereotypes. So that's definitely a part of the discussion today. I want to share a little bit more about who is Next Step and what we do. And as we move through the presentation, I'll call it the housing developers manufactured housing journey. I was on a journey. I used to be a housing developer, a nonprofit developer, single family home builder. And I had to take a journey really to learn and learn deeply why I thought this was a very good option for the future. We'll talk about the basics of manufactured housing, kind of do some of that 101, because I know there's a lot of confusion out there. So I want you to leave today and know the difference between a manufactured home and a modular home, and maybe even take the word mobile home out of your language, okay? Then we'll talk about developing with the right home. What does it take to get this right? And if you're interested, I'll begin to discuss what you might think about if you want to integrate factories into your overall construction program. Okay, so let's start with some of the research. Now, both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been putting more effort into manufactured housing over the last, I'd say, 6-7 years. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of Freddie Mac's research out here. This is a really important time to talk about manufactured housing because we're all concerned about home prices, right? And the cost of construction. But there's something here I really want to point out, and that's in that second bullet. And that is 6 in 10 individuals say they'll consider purchasing a manufactured home. So here's a headline around research that I want you to keep in mind. Consumer demand for manufactured housing is increasing, okay? And some of us have theories about that. We'll talk about that a little bit more, okay? And by generation, 68% of millennials were likely to purchase a manufactured home, contrasted really to boomers, which still is about 40%. And a lot of our boomers think about manufactured housing when they downsize. Okay. The Manufactured Housing Institute is one of the trade associations for this industry. Just a couple of things to highlight. 22 million people live in manufactured homes. And in 2021, the average, the shipment for all homes was 105,000, okay? A little bit over that, but it only accounts for about 9% of new single family home starts. Now, last year, the average sales price of a new manufactured home without land was $106,000. Well, I can tell you that price is going up, okay? The data is showing us that that number is up. Now, keep in mind that's average, and that includes both single section and multi-section. So that seems a very low number. There's a spectrum of pricing in the manufactured housing field, and it really depends on how you specify the quality specifications, the energy efficiency specifications, and that as you do more requirements and raise your standards, the price will go up, and we'll talk more. Okay. A little bit more research here. The Urban Institute has really shed a light on some of the issues in this field, and I'm really excited to see their work, okay? So some of the things they're noting that 2022, it's a robust start. And I will tell you that, over the last year, Next Step has really been challenged to even get a home order placed because business has been so strong. But now we're just beginning to see the market soften in some places, given that interest rates are increasing. It used to be that if you wanted to order a home, your order may sit in the queue on the West Coast for as long as 1 year because there was such demand on manufactured housing through COVID and coming out of COVID. We still see that in comparison with site-built housing, it still remains pretty low. It's typically about 9%, okay? And why is this? Well, generally, I would say that zoning restrictions and some of the financing constraints kind of keep us at that 100,000 level. It has been for a little while. But keep in mind, this industry back in the late 90s was shipping as many as 340,000 homes a year, okay? And it really needs to be back up at that level to address the needs that we have in the country. A little bit more research out by Urban. What's really important, I think, when we think about Urban Institute, I'm going to source a new study that was put out July of this year, okay? And I think our colleagues are going to put that study link into the chat function. And this study is called The Role of Manufactured Housing in Increasing the Supply of Affordable Housing. It was written by Karan Kaul, and it's really excellent. And so some of the things in this study that I want to point out, the headlines for me, again, consumer demand is increasing, and he takes us through the data to show that. Second is that there is now evidence that the quality has improved, okay? And he talks about the policy triggers and then looking at the data to show that the policy change have made a real difference. So we've seen policy changes that include maybe after the hurricanes in the 90s, Hurricane Andrew in particular, that HUD really changed some of the specifications, and that had an overall effect nationally for all homes, okay? We also really updated in 1994 the energy standards, right? And so we saw that improve. And over time, we keep increasing the quality of manufactured housing. And recently, the DOE has published a final rule to really elevate energy efficiency for all manufactured homes. That is to start implementation next May, and will continue to be on this path of much higher quality homes, which is very exciting for next steps since that's our mission. Okay, so in addition to the work that the Urban Institute has been doing, I just also want to point out that HUD has some research out, and it's really what I'm talking about here, these quality improvements. Also want to point out, like, just want to hit a stereotype head on. A lot of people think manufactured homes burn much more than site-built homes, but that's not what the data tells us, okay? We also know, or we hear that this is a common myth, that if you live in a manufactured home, you're more likely to lose it in hurricane or tornado, right? But the changes in the code have proven that it's really more on par with site-built housing. And that's what's really important to remember. Now, the country does have a lot of older homes. And yes, I think they are more prone to some of these because they're not built at the same standard and they may not be affixed to a foundation in the same way. Okay. Let me share just a little bit of research that Next Step has done. So we have partnered with IKEA over the last couple of years. And one of the things that we did together was a national homebuyer survey. And what we learned, just a few things. We know home buyers are motivated by space, even if they're living in a small home. They want that organized really well. They need that a lot in our research about those family connections and the way you live. They're very concerned about their budget and what they can afford. I think for those of us who work with housing counselors, it was really good to see in our study that 77% were interested in working with a housing expert. But 45% of new home buyers in this study were interested in buying a factory-built home. We think that if you look at some of the data about millennials, more so than maybe boomers and Gen X, are more interested in want. Well, we think that we call it the tiny home effect. Some of this has been, could I live smaller footprint? Yes, most of these are built in factories. And so they're in the overall public. I think we're beginning to see this shift and this interest, which is pretty exciting for us. The study also told us that energy efficiency was very important to our buyers, and 3 in 5 were willing to pay up to $2,000 more for their home for more energy efficient options. Now, one of the biggest myths that I hear is these homes depreciate. You should never do this. Well, that's not what the data is telling us. So we have new evidence that shows manufactured homes appreciate as well as site-built homes. Okay, we'll go back. And that this data is put together for the home price index for both traditional manufactured homes. The source is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, and we need to continue to have more data to prove this going forward. So why is all this so important? Well, supply gap, right? We're at this historical low in our supply. We've seen studies that Freddie Mac says it's about 3.5 million homes. I've seen another study that says the range may go up towards 7 million, right? But what we do know is that for typical Americans at the middle, what they can afford probably looks like between 200 and 250,000. But if you look at what single family home builders are putting on the market today, the data is telling us those homes are more than 350,000. Okay. For those of us working in this space, we know this, right? But the data, we're definitely here, and we have a lot of market pressures. And one of the pressures we have, and we're pulling this statistic from Freddie Mac, there are about 32 million mortgage-ready millennials that could buy. And with household formation and the pressures that we have in the marketplace, that's where we're seeing this historical supply low because we haven't been building enough. Okay. So if we want to reduce the cost, how can we shave out money? And I think that's why a lot of people are here. And we think one way to do it is definitely building in the factory, because we're getting that scaled efficiency. We're getting higher quality standards now. And next step, we partner with factories that can do this across the country. In particular, when you bring a mission-driven, high-capacity developer to the table, we can put more supply out. Now, just a little bit of an introduction of next step. David told you our mission, and you can see it here. I just want to share a little bit about how we came about. So I am from Kentucky, spent most of my life living in Appalachia, had seen a lot of what I called manufactured housing done wrong, and really asked the simple question, what would it take to make it right? And I worked on a set of quality standards. I felt like it had to be Energy Star, and then we had to educate consumers, right? And that we had to provide access to really good loans. And so we started doing this work in Appalachia. But in 2011, we started Next Step, coming out of some local work, and began to take it nationwide. So these are our core principles that we are centered on, and we call manufactured housing done right. Thanks for letting me take a break for water. So in these principles, I've just mentioned some of these. And I think it's important to know that we also advocate for public policy to support this. And that's really helping remove the stigma, and we advocate for good programming for our home buyers. At Next Step, I think we're really focused on a vision that I'd like to explain. Most of the manufactured housing system up to date has been focused on a point of sale where people go to retail lots, and there they can purchase a home. They can often find a loan, and that home is put on a lot that they find. We imagine a system that goes from that to one where home buyers can go into diverse, vibrant neighborhoods, and they can shop online for a home. They can have access to great mortgages, really normalizing the home buying shopping experience to make it look more like the traditional home buying process. So that's Next Step's vision and what we're working on. And to achieve this, we believe it's really important for us to empower our home buyers, to drive policy policy change. And there we work on, again, increasing quality, working on zoning issues, and also working to make sure that through the Federal Housing Finance Agency's duty to serve the manufactured housing market, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have good programming and good loan options for this market. We are also working on this new sales ecosystem that I just described, being able to shop in neighborhoods and be able to engage with realtors, if you will, and bank lenders so that they can purchase their home. And then next step is working to look out into the future and where are we going? And because we've worked in energy efficiency and supported Energy Star for our first 10 years, and through our policy work and with others, we've been able to get to this point finally where the Department of Energy and HUD are really raising the energy standards for all homes. So it's time for us to move our football out for that kick, if you will, and we're going to start moving towards zero energy within 5 years. I've mentioned our zoning work, our policy work, but I just want to point out that we know zoning is local, but we want to be good thought leaders on this and bring more awareness where we need zoning changes that allow for manufactured housing. So we're at this point that we've looked at the research and we've looked at some facts. We understand a little bit more about Next Steps mission. And I want to kind of take you through my journey as a developer or what you may be thinking or experiencing. The first thing I would say to you is to know the facts. You know, I came to this not really thinking that this would be the best product for my homeowners. And I wanted to do the research. So, I started by visiting a factory and really beginning to put things, well, this is myth, this is fact. And the facts led me to do this kind of work. So first of all, there's some common misconceptions, okay? Manufactured homes or factory-built homes are the same thing as trailers or mobile homes. They are not, okay? In fact, the term trailer or mobile home applied to homes built before 1976. And manufactured homes are not mobile. The way Next Step does it, they go on a permanent foundation. Now, you may hear language that's a little bit confusing. So I use the word factory built, okay? Or sometimes the industry calls it off-site homes. It's clearly homes built in factories. And there are two major types of homes built in factories. That's a manufactured home and also a modular home. But you can see other things that are being built. Tiny homes, which we're not going to talk about today. Not really even going to talk about panelized, but that's an option. And then there's, of course, accessory dwelling units and even log homes, right? All this really is included under this umbrella of factory-built homes. But what we're talking about building today are these manufactured homes that are on screen, okay? So today's homes, and we're going to show you a lot of pictures today. The home on my left with the carport was one of the very first homes and demonstrations done in 2005, and it still looks like that today. All the way to the other photo, which is in Knoxville, and this particular development being done by Clayton to demonstrate how manufactured housing can be done. These are not modular, they're manufactured. So let me explain what a modular home is. And some of you may be developing with that now. It's built in a factory, but it's built to a local or state building code. Sections are built and it's transported on a truck to a site, often with a crane that picks the unit or the boxes up, puts them together on site, okay? And these can be built in a factory where a manufactured home is being built. In fact, Next Steps specifications, sometimes we're ordering a manufactured home, sometimes we're ordering a modular home. A manufactured home is different. Again, it's built in the factory. It's of course, it's a single family home, but it's built to a national construction standard, which we call the HUD code. Housing and Urban Development is the regulator for the manufactured housing industry. We can build these homes in single sections or multi-sections and put the sections together on site. They are inspected by independent third parties, and the housing and urban development process allows for an inspection system. Okay, it's just a little bit about the industry. Gosh, there's 143 factories owned by 35 corporations. They're building about 106,000 a year. Okay, there's about only 20,000 modular homes being built on a given year. For manufactured housing, about 26% of those are certified as Energy Star. But what I want to impress is that this is really America's largest source of unsubsidized affordable housing, and the median income of people living in these homes is about $35,000. So a little bit more on the basics, okay? So you're beginning to build your knowledge, get your research and your facts. We talked about it, manufactured housing being built to the HUD code, okay? The second thing I would want you to know about this home is that the code allows for this home to be built on a structural frame, which is a steel chassis. And that allows the home to move up and down the interstates. That steel chassis stays in place and it's integral to the foundation system. So that is one distinction between a modular home and a manufactured home, okay? And with a manufactured home, you also have what's called the HUD certification label. Sometimes we refer to the red tag, okay? You can see that this is actually installed on the home, on that chassis. You can find this label, okay? There's also a data plate that gives information on the home, where it's built, where it's being shipped to, what all the zones are. So there's quite a bit of information there, and every home is labeled. You should also think about that the HUD code preempts the local building code. Okay, so this was set up so these homes could be shipped into any and every jurisdiction in the country. However, zoning has been able to make it illegal to bring these homes into certain cities just through zoning. Okay. So why would we want to use manufactured housing? There's some clear benefits here. It is more affordable. I think overall it's a greener approach to building homes in the US. We can get high energy efficiency. We can get some flexible designs and amenities now. It's safe and there are good warranties. But there are challenges still, right? I already named zoning. Financing can be a challenge for some, but it has improved so much over the years in that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have created programs now for manufactured homes that meet certain high quality standards. And the way they're cited, the way that they're installed, that it makes the family who's buying the home eligible really good for a traditional 30-year loan that's on par with site-built housing. We're still running into challenges in some states around titling. When we develop with manufactured housing, we convert a title that might remind you of a car title, but we convert that to real property. Depends on the state. Appraisals, we're all working on that to make sure that appraisers are educated on today's manufactured homes, but I know we still have a lot more work to do in that area. And overall, there still is a stigma around manufactured housing, okay? And a lot of that is based on not knowing the facts, and we're helping improve that. Factory building is a lot about precision, right? And that's where we can get a controlled environment. We can have skilled tradesmen that are paid well with benefits. They can build faster, it's rapid completion. We can do these modern designs and we can keep a system that's inspected. Again, some more advantages. It reduces costs, it's shorter construction times, it's faster move-in, you don't get those weather delays, and generally it's about half the price of site building. We've already talked about some of the greener ways, but I just want to point out, there are more options today. Low flow, lower VOC paints, recycled materials, and we continue to push the envelope on that. Costs now, I want to review that with you. I think this is really important if you're thinking about your developer journey. If we just look at cost per square foot going across, site built at $136 a square foot. But if we're looking at factory built, for a mortgage, it's at about $180. You can look at the cost average of these, which you can see that it's less for factory built. If I go to the bottom line, which is so important, the monthly housing costs for consumers. If I look at my site built column, it's over $2,000. For factory built going into a traditional mortgage, it's about $1,400. So that's the reason we continue to use factory built housing. But to do factory built housing, it's about getting this right and getting the home right, okay? So there is a new way to think about manufactured housing, and that's been called cross mod homes. Now, first of all, it is not modular, it is manufactured, okay? It meets the HUD federal code. But what the industry has done is basically create standards that are much like Next Steps. Next Steps is still a little bit stricter because we require an Energy Star certification and an FHA Title II permanent foundation. But this has allowed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to really get the certification on these homes now to offer this great financing that's now available in the market. It's important when you're picking your home that you do it on a permanent foundation. We believe in getting the roof pitch right and elevate it so it blends into communities and neighborhoods, and that you look at other features that are so important to getting this done right. Next Step has been developing with manufactured housing all the way back to 2005, where we did an original demonstration of manufactured housing done right. We continue to have the highest quality standards in the industry, but we do more than just do housing. We also make sure that counselors are supported so they can get the right information to the consumers. Okay. So this is a part of the presentation that I'm going to pick up and just show you a lot of pretty pictures, quite frankly. And hopefully you can kind of get a little bit excited about what's possible today. So garages, I think, are really important now into getting the right looks. Here's another photo of in a market that shows us how we can integrate those porches. And then we're going to take a look inside into some of the homes. And you can see nice features in cabinets now. You can see nice decor packages and finish and trim. We're now seeing kitchens that are very desirable for consumers. There's another photo of that. We're getting a lot of options in bathrooms now, particularly in showers. Again, another kitchen for you to look at and some of the features. We're getting better laundry rooms now. Here's a master bath. Master bedroom, and it includes a master bath, and here it is. So I hope you're enjoying these pictures, and I just want to point out that Next Step has partnered with a private developer. We're taking on a project in Kilpatrick Woods in Hagerstown, Maryland, doing 241 homes. For those of you that are in that mid-Atlantic and DC area, we're going to be having an open house in May. We'd love to have more people out to see what these homes look like on the ground. And we hope that you can join us to do that. And you can just reach out to me directly to do that. So how do you want to integrate factory built housing into your developer program? Well, if you need help, what I would want you to know is that Next Step can provide consulting services. We can also provide some matchmaking with factories. We're willing and able to share our specifications or help certify plans and specs for you so that the home buyers can be eligible for better loans. We provide support and training to housing counselors. And even in some markets, particularly Mid-Atlantic, if you need a for-profit or another nonprofit partnership, we can help bring more partners together to do this type of housing. So I want to open it up to questions. I want to thank you for having me today, and I hope you learned a fact or two about manufactured housing.
Stacey, thank you so much for this excellent presentation. We have a number of questions that have come in, and again, I want to encourage everybody. We have over 100 attendees on the call right now, so please send your questions in. I think I'd like to get us started with a question. You mentioned a number of challenges, a variety of challenges for growing manufacturer housing's share of the market, the affordable homeownership market, zoning, financing, titling, appraisals, public stigma, lack of facts. And I think you said that financing and zoning tend to be the biggest challenges. Can you talk more about those? And one of the questions that came in is related to financing. Why do Freddie and Fannie need to be convinced to allow financing on these homes?
Okay, great question. So let me start with financing first. I think it's important just to let's understand what the industry's been doing. Okay, so there's two types of finance in manufactured housing. Sometimes we refer to it as home only or chattel finance. That's one part of the market. The other part is land, home, or mortgages. Okay, so the chattel part it has been a challenge in that there's a small number of lenders. There's little competition. It's about a $5 billion industry. Interest rates, median interest rates on that, about 7.5, 7.8. Okay, average loan size, 75,000. It's small loan. So for those of you who are following some of the research and work done around small loans, we know those still carry a big cost to originate, right? And today, Fannie and Freddie are not buying chattel loans. Okay, so I want to point that out. However, there is a requirement called duty to serve for manufactured housing. And many of the advocates, particularly one advocate is the Underserved Mortgage Market Coalition. And I work on that coalition. I know many on the call are probably involved with us. We're looking at duty to serve. And so one of the recommendations we had on our scorecard was to allow pilots to move forward with Fannie and Freddie for chattel finance. Freddie is moving forward with one that's in their plan. I think long-term, this might make chattel loans more affordable for consumers. Okay. Now, next step really though focuses our work on the mortgage side. Okay. And I think it's wrong to say that, oh, that's fixed. We don't have to worry about that. It's always a challenge, right? Fannie and Freddie might be getting it right at the top, but we still see, mortgage companies that are faced with investors that don't have all the facts, right? And we see maybe some banks that are not participating in offering, big lenders, right? So I think, why Fannie and Freddie, why would they have to be convinced? I think they're convinced, okay? But it's moving the whole ecosystem and everybody in the field along with the facts so we can offer more of this finance. I'll just want to point out that the manufactured housing mortgage side is about a $15 billion industry was last year. It serves a median loan of about 158,000. Okay, so that's where your more expensive homes are. That's where you're seeing more the homes behind me. That's kind of where next steps in that space with our specifications. But of course, interest rates are going up, but we're seeing 30-year loans. Last year, we saw an interest rate of about 3.5%. Income for these loans, a median is about 58,000. So it's still a good piece of affordable housing. And I think it may be coming the new kind of starter home lane for a lot of Americans. Okay.
David, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Stacey, thank you for that. A follow-up question. Are there certain states, localities, regions of the country where manufactured housing, where there's more opportunity or demand for manufactured housing?
Okay, that's a great question, David. I think historically we've seen most demand in the South. Okay, the southern states have the highest placements, right? And there's different reasons. One, I think it's the income levels, right? I think it's also a function of maybe less zoning restrictions of keeping manufactured housing out. And there's probably some other reasons. It may be locations of some of the big builders and just very robust. Texas has the strongest market in the country by far, okay? We also see it in more of the sand states. So California, Arizona, definitely Florida, right, are all big states. But what I want to point out is new research done by Freddie Mac, and this is something maybe we can follow up with and get out to folks. They did some work on zoning, and they identified manufactured housing friendly states, looking at some of what it takes on the ground and how zoning is perceived and executed. And really, we're talking about the Midwest. That may be the spot really to get to for some of the development there. Okay. If I could also, though, let me back up and say, there are two states that I want to highlight because they took the initiative to advocate for state law that prohibits discrimination of manufactured housing in local zoning. California got it right a long time ago. You can develop, you can have manufactured housing, you don't discriminate against it in California. Second place, Oregon has a more progressive stance with manufactured housing. There are a lot of advocates, developers, and we've even got a new factory coming that's in the works being looked at in that state. So that's another area that I would point out that's really ripe for development.
Thanks, Stacey. We have and we'll share a link for the index that you mentioned, Freddie Mac's manufactured housing friendly jurisdiction index. Raquel, do you want to pull some questions from the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Really quick, there are a few questions just asking about whether this presentation will be made, available to folks, and the answer is yes. So for all those who've asked that, please know in a couple days we'll be sending out a summary of this SIB call along with the recording and presentation. So just wanted to let folks know that. So a couple questions real quick for you, Stacey. At the top of this is just talking about your current partners and what cities. You just went over, some of that. Another quick question here. Do next step home buyers have to own the underlying land?
That's a great question. In not all cases can you own the land. And so most of our work is focused on owning land and home, make a mortgage. However, we like to work with nonprofits like Rock USA that are helping residents collectively buy the land beneath their homes, right? And so we work with those cooperatives when they have infill needs or replacement needs. We've also worked with nonprofits when they have owned a manufactured housing community, okay? And help them do replacement and infill. So that's another case where a next step would not require you own the land when there's more a mission-driven nonprofit that in some way secures land tenure. So that's what we care about.
Great, thank you for that. Another question coming in, you mentioned Energy Star options, but are there manufactured homes that meet net zero or passive home levels? If so, who are they and what models do they have? Sorry.
Okay, that's a great question. So I would say that there have been demonstrations and research toward zero energy. Next Step and some of our nonprofit partners have participated in that. We have case studies that our team can make available for you guys to get out. We've done some of this work in upstate New York in a cold climate zone. We've done work with Affordable Housing Alliance in New Jersey in a community that they've owned. We've tested solar. There's been long-term research on utilities. We're excited that the Department of Energy has funded one of our research partners, which is called the Systems Building Research Alliance. They're in New York. They administer the Energy Star program for manufactured housing in most of the country. They have a 3-year grant from the Department of Energy to prototype new zero energy ready homes. And next up is going to be a subrecipient on that grant to do 3 tests in 3 thermal zones in the country. The first year, though, is really on research. So I think this is evolving, is what I'd want the audience to know. If you want to get involved, you should contact us. We're looking to see the projects that we pick around the country to do some of these demonstrations.
Thank you so much for that, Stacey.
Mm-hmm.
David, I'm going to ask one more question here. We've got about 2 more questions. Can you provide examples, Stacey, outside of single-family detached neighborhoods? So any models for more dense environments like stacked boxes?
Oh gosh, yes. So, with modular, let me talk about modular first. You could really begin to stack there, and you can do multifamily. We see that out in California. Some of the work that's been done and looked at maybe out of the Turner Center, definitely there's been support, I think, for new modular builders out in California to do some multifamily tax credit deals. Okay, all right. Another area something that's going on is new changes to the HUD code, where we're looking at 2 to 4 family with manufactured housing that can create more density, I think, particularly for infill in cities, that are looking to get a little bit more density, right? Another way to increase density with manufactured and modular is accessory dwelling units. We're going to be doing some tests with our partner in PHS in Southern California. They're running an ADU program. They also do factory built, and they really do manufactured housing right. Okay. They have a growing manufactured housing program there. So that's another way to increase density, particularly out on the West Coast, where we've got accessory dwelling unit friendly zoning requirements now.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A wealth of information today.
Okay.
I think I'll ask one more question here, and then we can wrap up on Q&A.
Okay.
So this person sent in, I have a lot of rural property that I would like to put affordable homes on, but I am concerned about infrastructure needs. The area has had a number of trailer homes or very old homes, some still with dirt floors. Can these homes work in areas there is not a lot of public infrastructure? I guess where there is not a lot of public infrastructure. The area has been prone to tornadoes. Are they sturdy enough to withstand the elements in Illinois? So this is a Illinois based.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the requirements on wind zones have changed, and they are safer, but any home you put in front of an F4 tornado, it's going to have a problem, right? So we kind of have to think about that. But what I would want you to know that the quality has changed. But you can think about this if you're really concerned about it. You could create a community with a community place for people to go if it's out on the open plains, right? For a tornado shelter is one way to approach that. Okay. You can also put manufactured homes on basements, and that may be a way for you to go if you have that concern. I do want to speak to infrastructure, right? If you've had old mobile homes there, some of the older stock, you probably need to really take a hard look to start over on infrastructure too, right? It's been my experience, right, as you do this. So I would look at it as a totally community development, redevelopment, lining up your resources, maybe the USDA to go in and do that piece of work with you.
Okay. Fantastic. There are a few more questions. We'll hope that we can get you answers to everything, but we do need to move on right now to our policy updates. And so, David, I'm going to hand it back over to you. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thank you, Stacey. David, I think I'll pitch it over to you for the NCST policy updates.
Excellent, thanks. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you to Stacey for that excellent presentation. I just have a few updates for you guys about policy relevant issues that NCST is working on. The first one has to do with the Federal Housing Administration and CWCOT, which is essentially that is a mechanism through which FHA backed distressed properties are sold. And NCST is now running a program to its buyers that participate in the REO match program, where CWCOT assets are made available for purchase by NCST buyers. So I wanted to let folks know that we've been developing the program in partnership with Zome.com, which is one of the larger action websites out there, and we've had some success in facilitating nonprofit and owner-occupant bids on these CWCOT properties, because those are the kinds of outcomes that HUD wants to be encouraging. So I will continue to work on this program. If you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone at NCST who you work with, which includes me. Two other policy issues that I wanted to discuss with the group today. The first one concerns a different FHA program. Specifically, it's related to manufactured housing, much as Stacey's presentation was today. NCST is working with the Lincoln Institute to make recommendations to HUD and Ginnie Mae about how they can better support manufactured housing titled as chattel or personal property. So if anyone's interested in those efforts, I'm happy to discuss. It's about getting better financing options in the market and really stamping out some of the worst consumer protections or security of land tenure issues that can make manufactured housing titled as personal property sometimes problematic. Finally, NCST, along with our partners in the industry, the Housing Policy Council, sent a letter to the leaders of FHA, FHFA, VA, RHS, and CFPB, calling on them to examine the communications that they have with borrowers who are having trouble paying their mortgages. So unlike the foreclosure crisis that NCST was founded to counteract, a big difference is home prices haven't declined. In fact, they've gone up quite a bit in recent years. So many borrowers have home equity that they don't, if they can't find an option that works for them to continue making payments on the home and sustain the mortgage, they don't have to do a short sale. They don't have to do a deed in lieu. They can simply just sell the home by themselves. So we want the housing regulators to be making clear that this is an option. We want them to be appropriately sequencing the time at which they begin discussing this option with consumers. We think the priority needs to be on loss mitigation that keeps people in their homes. But this is a very important piece of how kind of like lingering COVID-related mortgage distress is going to be resolved, is people are just going to sell their homes. So we want federal regulators to be paying attention to it. So thanks, everyone. Those are the three issues that I wanted to cover. I don't know, David, if there are any other policy issues you wanted to discuss, or whether we should turn to Q&A.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I just wanted to mention briefly on the Homeownership Alliance side, which is, as some of you may know, NCST staffs the Homeownership Alliance, which is a policy collaboration among approximately 30 CDFIs and nonprofit housing developers. We focus on federal policy advocacy, and on the regulatory side, we've been working. We recently submitted 2 sets of recommendations to HUD on regulatory updates to the CDBG program and the home program. The home recommendations were consensus recommendations that were developed as with other national home stakeholders, and both sets of recommendations align with the Biden-Harris administration's housing supply action plan and kind of all hands on deck. How can we use existing resources to do more housing development and preservation? And then we also have developed for Treasury's review 3 proposals related to the New Markets Tax Credit Program, the CDFI Financial Assistance Program, and let me just go to my notes, the Capital Magnet Fund Program. Again, proposed enhancements that could yield increased resources for affordable housing production and preservation. All of those policy proposals are on the Alliance's webpage on the NCSC's website. So you can look there for more details, or feel free to reach out to me with questions. So yeah, so David, are there more questions that have come in? Let me see.
Absolutely. And if anyone has any questions about policy, feel free to enter those in the chat or pipe up as well.
There's a question here on manufactured housing companies. Can you provide information on BIPOC-owned companies? And we didn't speak directly to racial equity and the the goal of reducing the tremendous gap in racial gap in affordable home ownership and household wealth building. So Stacey, I don't know if you have any information on BIPOC participants in the manufactured housing market. We'd be interested in anything you might have to share on that.
David, I'm not sure if you asked me a question. My Zoom quit unexpectedly and I just got back in.
That's okay.
Okay.
So there was a question about BIPOC participation in the manufactured housing industry, and I said we really didn't talk on this call about the nexus of this with racial equity and in closing the racial homeownership gap and household wealth building gap. So interested in any thoughts on that.
Thank you for repeating that. That's a great question. I would say overall, this industry has a ways to go in terms of BIPOC ownership. Okay, and Next Step recognizes that. In fact, in our strategic plan, we're making a deliberate effort to serve communities to help with racial equity in the projects that we pick, and also the partners that we've picked. One of the things that we're doing is partnering with a nonprofit in Southern California, a longtime partner, neighbor in PHS, and we're going to create a BIPOC developer program using manufactured housing, okay, to try to increase the participation there. So there's some actions we're taking, but I do not have the statistic what the ownership is, but it's just being around this industry. I think there's a ways to go. Okay.
Thanks, Stacey. I think I would just add that we'll share if we have information or find additional information on that, we'll share it. There's also, David, have we shared the I'm Home network link? Because that would be another.
We have, David.
Okay.
So yeah, in the chat, we shared a link to the Lincoln Institute's I'm Home Coalition, and they are kind of a collection of practitioners and also people who care about policy related to manufactured housing and innovative ways of doing it right.
Thank you. So we are at time. I want to thank Stacey so much for your presentation and all this. It's a rich subject area. There's obviously a lot of work that can be done, and So thank you all for attending, and we'll be sharing the link to the recording and also sharing information on the next briefing, which we still need to schedule. So David, Raquel, Stacey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.